Welcome to Metal Wani. This is your host Vitek, and with us today we have a drummer who has played on almost every heavy metal band on this planet. That's right, Gene Hoglan with us. How you doing?
Hi everybody, how you guys doing? It's good to be here.
Awesome. Now, Testament just done with a long European tour with Exodus and Shattered Sun. So, how's the experience of playing this, amazing tours, festivals with your buddies from other bands?
Well, it's always great. It's always fun to be out on the road, and it's always fun to be playing music for people and entertaining people. And when you get to do it with a bunch of old friends like Exodus, that's always great. It's a
Hmm.
super mellow hang. We all like hanging out and shooting the breeze together, so that's always real fun. And, one of my highlights from this last European tour was getting to jump up on stage during a sound check and play guitar for Exodus for a
That's
couple of
cool.
tunes, and that was real fun. Because I was explaining to the guys, way back when that, hey man, I learned how to play guitar to Bonded by Blood,
But yeah,
essentially. And I was just really, I was still learning guitar at the time. So, I remember learning the whole record on guitar, going, okay, I can't learn an album on guitar. So that was pretty cool.
that's awesome. I
So yeah,
mean,
it was a great time, great tour. We didn't play that many shows with Exodus. Yeah, we didn't play that many shows with Exodus over. We did about 12 out of the 30 shows that we did with Exodus, and those were always real fun. But we got to play a whole bunch of festivals and stuff with Metallica. They're our buddies too, so that was cool. And getting to see Faith No More a few nights,
right.
that was really awesome. One of my favorite rock bands, so getting to see them and sit down with Mike, their drummer, and talk drums with him, that was really cool.
That's awesome. I mean, you grew up in the music business playing with Dark Angel, obviously at the age of 16. And then you went on to do Death, Strapping Young Lad, and you, like I said, played on almost every band on this planet. So how do you feel about this journey so far? It's been almost 3 decades now.
Yeah, I think it has been over 3 decades essentially for me, but I'm in my fourth, and I'm not even 50, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's been great. It's had its ups and downs, but the ups are always what I concentrate on and what I
Right.
like to reflect on and look back on. And the downs were always just character building moments for myself.
Hmm.
When things are tough and you know you have rough times as musicians sometimes, and it
True.
doesn't always have to be the way for everybody, but in the underground metal world, you've got your ups and downs, and well, I tell you, for the last decade, it's only been one up after another, so that's been great. So
That's awesome.
what a great way to be. It's like you learn a lot of character growing up, and then you get to apply all that character when things are really awesome. So that's the way it's been for the last decade or so. So I'm really stoked, and I feel very fortunate.
That's really awesome. It's always inspirational. I mean, you put so much heart and soul and attention into a band like Dark Angel, and then it was time for you to move on. So, since you guys have reunited, has the vibe changed, or it's still the same, that same feeling back in the 80s?
Um, there are many, absolutely many elements that are the same.
Hmm.
Like wanting to come out and crush. Wanting to come out and put on good shows. And now that we're starting to write the next record, that's we want to write the best record we can, the most ball crushing heavy album we can, and we don't want to pull any punches. And the one thing that has changed a little bit, I know I've matured a lot in the
That's right.
last 30 years, and I'm not quite the crabby taskmaster
Super
that I was
taskmaster.
back in the day. Yeah, so now it's fun, hanging out with the guys. We're polite to each other, like we were never polite when we were kids. We're like, man, fuck you, man, oh, fuck you too. And
Right.
now it's like, now we're adults now, and we handle things like adults, and it's pretty smooth, and it's really cool, and we have a good time with it. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome because Jim was always the leader, and then, like you said, you stepped in, took the responsibility. But right now, I'm sure it's all different. So, is Gene Hoglan still the driving force behind the band, or it's equally divided now?
Well, I think everybody is their own driving force within the band. I know everybody drives themselves within the band, and that's always cool. So I don't have to be checking in with everybody. Like, I know Ron is always working on his vocals, and because we all live in separate parts of the country now.
Right.
I know Ron feels his own pride and responsibility in what he does to keep himself in shape.
True.
Vocally and physically too, and everybody's on their own. Everybody's adults. We're all grown men. I don't have to be calling you guys to be checking. Are you still playing the guitar? Yeah. I know Eric's playing his guitar. He's playing his guitar. Gon's is doing his bass. So I know everybody's got their own quadrant taken care of, and that's a nice ease. They probably always did, but I was just such that micromanager back in the day, and I don't have to be that anymore, and that makes everything a real easy transition into this stage of Dark Angel. Mm-hmm. And if I don't consider everybody is a really good leader on their own, and my main thing, I guess, is trying to free up the time to get the writing done, because
right.
Jim, it's Jim and myself were the primary writers back in the day, and Eric would throw in some ideas when he had them and when he'd have them, and I'm sure he's got ideas now. We aren't quite to that level to where we're like, hey, everybody, toss us your ideas, because Jim and I are still working out stuff,
Okay.
and I one thing I do realize about Dark Angel and the writing process of Dark Angel is, even though we now have all this modern technology of, you can Skype with somebody and play guitar over the Skype with somebody and send files of, hey, I got a demo, I've got some drum tracks on a demo and some guitar tracks here, learn this. Mm-hmm. Even though all that technology exists, at least myself and the way I feel with Jim is like, I think we still work best when we are both sitting in the same room together and just firing out ideas at each other. And that's where it's been a challenge over the last 7 or 8 months, because I've spent most of this 7 or 8 months on the road, small break over. But I just right now got off of 4 months straight with Death and Testament. So now that we've got a little bit of time home, we got back earlier this week, and I got sick immediately. So now I'm just getting over it. And so I would imagine in this coming time period that we have off, Jim and I are going to be getting together and firing some ideas off each other, and then it's going to be, it's on again. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Have you guys come up with some? I'm sure there are songs which are, let's say, half written or still in progress. Over the period of time, has the sound changed? Because the stuff you guys might be working on, let's say early 2014 or mid 2014, and here we are right now in mid 2015. Has it kind of changed as the time passes by?
Well, that's a good question. I guess the thing that I personally, just myself, am trying to do is not necessarily recreate any of Dark Angel's previous sounds, but try to recreate the feelings that we had, the energy that we had, like the energy that we had when we were writing Darkness Descends.
Right.
Try to capture that energy, just that feeling, and rather than let's just write another song that sounds like The Burning of Sodom, or another song that sounds like Black Prophecies or something like that. Let's not worry about repeating ourselves, but it's okay if we capture the enthusiasm and the energy that we had when we were really young. There were no rules, there wasn't anybody looking over our shoulders to say, hey, you better write songs like this. That's right. The way we feel now. Nobody's over our shoulders. We do have people saying, hey, can we get the process moving? And yes, we're trying that, but nobody's telling us, well, you have to write like this and you have to write like that. All I want to do is write like Dark Angel, and I'm sure Dark Angel 2015 might have some different elements that Dark Angel 1986 had. That's right. But the aggression is still going to be there. And, you know, I personally want to write the most ball-crushing record we can. I've been talking about that in the press, and people come up to me now and say, well, what does ball-crushing mean? It's like, it just means heavy and, you know, destroying, and an album that, you know, if you've waited for, God, what's it been, you know, 20, you know, it'll be 25 years since the last Archangel record, essentially. If you've been waiting that long, you will be absolutely pleased with the wait. You won't be disappointed. You'll be like, hell yeah, way to come back, dudes. You know, it's not some limp return record. I won't let it be, you know, like my quality control, Jim's quality control, Eric, Ron, Don's, all of our quality control is that we just want it to be the coolest record we can do. And
awesome.
And by, you know, I'm obviously an old vet at this, and I know it's cool. So if I think it's cool, I have a feeling other people are going to think it's cool too. Yeah.
That's cool. So any plans of, you know, heading to the studio, or let's say possible release date?
No plans whatsoever. We are just still writing, and like I said, since the last 7 months, like Jim sends me ideas all, and a lot of, you know, many of his ideas are like, oh God, yes, this is what we're talking about, Jim, yes. And Jim is also like, hey, I've got some of these other kind of ideas too, you know, here's, you know, I'm just writing. That's what Jim is doing. He's like, I'm writing everything right now, and
awesome.
I got to admit, a lot of it is super like, God, this is what I'm talking about, Jim. And other stuff is like, hey, you know, when he'll preface the email with the attachment saying, I know this isn't quite what we're probably looking for, but hey, here's something I just wrote anyway. And it's always cool because Jim writes great riffs, and you know, so much of it is directly what Dark Angel is. You know, Jim Durkin created Dark Angel, and you know, I've always said that, hey, he was the guiding force. You know, even after Jim left, he was the guiding force through me, because I'm not going to let Dark Angel slack in anything just because we don't have the founding member, the creative member of the team. And so now that Jim and I are back, it's awesome. You know, we have a great relationship, great writing relationship, and so I'm really stoked. And all I want to do, me, myself, personally, Gene, is write an album that just buries fucking everybody, you know. And
awesome.
That's what
That's fantastic. Now, coming back to Testament, what's the plan ahead? I mean, I had a chat with Eric at Download, and, you know, they said they're writing a new material, possibly releasing in early 2016. So you being a drummer right now, so is there something the tracking has started, or do you plan to do it by end of this year?
I would imagine that we're going to, you know, I know Eric and Eric's planning on, I live in San Diego. I know he's planning on coming down to San Diego to come down to my pad for a few days, and we're going to go to my rehearsal space and do some jamming there. And I think that's probably going to be good for Eric. It's like, okay, cool, I get to get out of my home zone, because a lot of times we go to his house in Sacramento, and I'm, you know, he's a man with a young family, so I know there's, you know, in the middle of jams, there's like, oh, I got to go pick up my kids, you know, I got to take them to soccer practice. You know, when you get to get out for a few days and just concentrate on nothing but music, you get nothing but music taken care of, and if that's what's the most beneficial for Eric and Testament to keep the album moving forward. I know the band has at least 5 or 6 songs, and I've heard they have them down on you know, little home demos.
Studio.
And yeah, they're kick-ass. You know, I went up there, we've got a little electronic drum set that we work with and track some stuff. And it sounds like real drums, and it's good enough to make a demo, so, you know, we can hand it over to Chuck, let him start learning it, and he comes down too, and he'll be doing some singing while Eric and I are jamming. He'll just be, you know, working out vocals in the background while Eric and I are writing riffs and stuff. And I know from all that I've heard from Testament is that they want to make it a really aggressive, real thrash-oriented record, and I'm all for that. I always push for go heavier.
Yeah.
Any band, no matter who I'm in, always go heavier. don't, you know, there is no radio anymore. There is no video anymore. There's
True.
nothing but own music that sells your band. And, you know, I don't think there's any heavy metal fan or any Testament fan or Dark Angel fan or whoever fan that isn't going to say, you know, yes to the band going heavier and more aggressive and more in your face. And that's how you keep heavy metal thriving by, you know, you've got all the young bands coming out with all the new blood and all the new influences that they bring, and then when you've got the guys that have been around for a while still bringing it heavy, trying to bring it even heavier. You know, you've got 30 years of guitar playing chops and drumming chops going into everything. You can write better music, you can write heavier music, you can push yourself harder. I am always about pushing yourself harder. Don't worry about what that band over there is doing or this band over here, what they're doing. Be true to yourself and write the heaviest stuff you can come up with. And if you're happy, your fans are going to be happy. Absolutely. You know, fans can always, they can smell it a mile away when the band comes out and goes and says all that same stuff that they said on the last record. I think this is our best album we've done since the early days. They can smell it when you're being true or when you're just saying the words, you know. Right. They can feel it with you, and then when they hear your first material off it, they're like, yeah, these guys are serious, you know.
Definitely. And that kind of reminded me of Mechanized when you worked with Fear Factory. I mean, a damn solid album. In fact, I felt that you raised the bar on the album in terms of, you know, drums sonically.
Absolutely. Thank you. I agree.
And, you know, it's kind of very simple to ask you. So if you're given an opportunity, let's say, which you obviously have, that you're willing to be part of the permanent drummer of Testament, would you go for it, or would you still prefer to be, you know, flexible while working with others?
Hey, you know what? I'm willing to discuss everything, but I'll tell you what, when it comes to what's best for me, I make sure that it is absolutely the best for me.
Definitely.
Because I've done so many years where it's like, Gene, this might not be the best thing for you, but the music is so good, and you enjoy the guys, but, you know, hey, you might be broke for a few years if you work with certain band, you know, whatever band, you know, like the Testament, I wouldn't be broke. I mean, obviously they're out there working, but I definitely, these days, I make all decisions that are absolutely 100% in my best interest.
True.
And that for me it's not being selfish. It is so I can be absolutely dedicated to you. Like if I'm a part of somebody's project and I'm a permanent member of it, then that means that all things are aligned for my best interest, and when my best interest is covered, then the band's best interest is covered, because you're going to get the happiest, funnest, most dedicated Gene you can imagine.
Absolutely.
And I'm there for everything, 100% commitment. And that's one of the reasons why I tend to float, because I will never be without a gig if I'm not involved with, you know, bands A, B, and C.
Yeah.
There will come along bands D, E, and F that are like, hey, Gene, we're available. Come over, jam with us. And I'll be like, sure, let's do it. So
yes,
my options don't ever just stop with what is obviously right in front of me. I know there's always options right over the hill, and so I never sweat future. So my future always looks bright, and that's why I always, these days, really try to look after what is the best for me. So we'll see. For me being a permanent planted member with anybody, if it works out the best for Gene, then hey, you got me.
That's awesome. I'm really glad that you came up with this. It's really great to see how the evolution of Gene Hoglan has been over the period of, I mean, in any album you work with, it's always that fans first think like, okay, the Gene is on the album, so they definitely check it out because they know what to expect from you, and you just don't disappoint them.
Well, that's cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's something I try to work on, and there are some albums where I get full, like, hey, Gene, these drum tracks are yours. You write them. And I like that. And there are other albums where it's like, hey, man, we've got some definite ideas that we want to get across to help our vision be properly, seen through. And so are you cool with us, kind of molding, giving you some direction, and
Right.
you do your own thing with it, us having the main, body, if we get to, if we, the band, get to give you the body, and then you work around the fluffing ups in spots of the body, is that cool too? And I'm like, that's great too. Hey, if the more input I get, that's always helpful. And if a band is like, hey, we've got all these songs already demoed, here's the final, pretty much what we want. We want to hand these demos over to you, and you learn them, and you make them your own, of course. But if that's cool with you, then that's cool with us. And I'm like, I'm always like, great. You have full songs done and you show me where you want the kick drum and you want the snare drum, and you want me to take it over from there, I'm cool with that as well. So
that's awesome.
I just think the best of both worlds that way. I don't have to rack my brain being super creative for somebody, and then on a lot of projects, I do get to rack my brain and be super creative. So
true, definitely.
It worked great.
Yeah, that's true. Now, Gene, what about live? I mean, more like a programmed drums, which were done on the Industralist, which fans kind of got pissed off a bit. And even on the new album, the Genesis, which is coming out in August, the guys are using, the new drummer definitely, but also some programmed parts. So for you as a drummer, do you kind of, feel happy with it, or it's just that you can go ahead and nail it on your own like you did on Mechanize?
I'm always like, I don't care what kind of drum machine you use. I will kill your drum machine. If you have a drummer like myself at your disposal, yet you are going to go with a drum machine, I don't understand the thought process behind that. And I did read where those guys were like, hey, man, we have a drummer come in. We got to pay him all this money. Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's number one right there. I see where you guys are coming from. First, we got to pay him all this money, and then we just turn around and chop up all the drums and grid everything anyway. Let's just cut out the middleman and just program the drums. I understand that from an economic standpoint, but, hey, if you're thinking long-term, you are not thinking. If you're thinking, somebody like Rob Zombie or somebody like that, it's just this droning disco drum sound anyway, use a drum machine. Who cares? Nobody listens to Rob Zombie to check out the drummer. But if you've got a band like Fear Factory or a band like Slayer or a band like Testament, you're not going to have a drummer. You're not going to have a drum machine playing for you and be taken seriously. So, hey, they tried it. They saw how seriously they got taken, and now they're using a real drummer. Hey, I'm stoked at the fact they got Dean Castronovo playing on their record. He's playing a track or two on there, I hear, and that's going to be awesome. I can't wait to hear his tune. But I got to admit, I'm Fear Factory is. I'll flat out be honest. It's the one band from my entire history that I just don't pay attention to. I'm not saying anything the band doesn't already know. They know they weren't on my radar before I joined them. They flat out know this. I was not a Fear Factory listener, or I did not pay attention to anything Fear Factory ever did. When they're saying, hey, man, do you know this song? I'm like, no. Can we jam this rehearsal right now? I'm like, hey, pull it up on an iPad real quick or an iPod and let me hear it for 5 minutes and I'll play it back for you. But if you want to kick into it right now this second, I don't know your material, dude. So I'll have to listen. And, and just even when looking back on my career, the Fear Factory era is just something that I just don't think about. When people ask me about Fear Factory, I sometimes think, why are you asking me about Fear Factory? And then they mention Mechanized. I'm like, oh, fuck, duh. You know, that's, I can't explain the mental block that I have. I've just kind of blocked it all out, you know. It's
Right. I
I came in, I gave Fear Factory the deadliest record they could ever imagine
Absolutely.
at the time, and their efforts afterwards weren't taken as seriously, so the proof is right there.
Absolutely. Now, Gene, when Testament played in India in 2013, you were not on tour because I think you were busy with some other gigs. So I don't know, I mean, if you were ever thought of playing here for your fans or a clinic or let's say with Dark Angel in future, or maybe even come back with Testament.
Oh, absolutely. I'm always open for anything, you know. And the reason I didn't do the Testament thing over there is I was over here in the United States with Death Clock, and that was our tour that we had. We had a like a co-headliner with Lamb of God, and us and them both headlining, and then Randy Blythe unfortunately had his situations over in Europe.
Yeah.
So that tour had to just be essentially like just broken down and reconstructed. So I remember we had, it turned out to be just a Death Clock headliner, and we had Machine Head and All That Remains and Black Dahlia Murder as our opening acts, and that tour just went through the same time period as Testament going over to India. So I was like, I can't do both, and I'm already committed to this one, guys. So, and they were like, yeah, do whatever, you know, we'll get Mark Hernandez, no worries. So that's how that worked. And there are shows coming up this summer where Testament has to get another drummer, and I'm not sure who they're going to get, but if I can help that gentleman out, whoever it may be, I absolutely will. You know, if he's got some spots where he's like, I can't quite figure out what you're playing here, Gene, on Native Blood or Rise Up or one of those later songs, it's like, hey, let me talk you through it, you know. So I'm always really open like that, you know. Anybody that comes in and plays in a band after myself, I'll absolutely help you get to, just so you're playing the songs so the fans recognize them, you know.
Right, Gene. Awesome, Gene. I mean, it's that sense of satisfaction and the happiness which comes out of a journalist when I talk to somebody like Gene Hoglan. That's right here. 30 minutes spent with you over the call, and it's been a great experience.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Vitek. I appreciate that. Thank you. Same here, man. It works the same way with musicians. Musicians always like speaking to somebody who's into it and enthusiastic. And you know, we do so many interviews with somebody that it's just like, oh, okay, you read the Wikipedia page. Yeah. I get it. And you've got the same old kind of standard questions as the last guy had. I get it. But you know, we always enjoy talking to somebody who's enthusiastic and you know, a fan. So that's always fun for us. So that's cool. It goes both ways, Vitek.
Absolutely, Gene. Thank you very much for sparing some time. I look forward to catch you guys live, if not with Testament or with any other band. It's always a pleasure, and probably a clinic here in India in 2016 would be great.
Oh man, absolutely. We'll make something happen. You know, we'll get over there in some project. I'll be over there at some point. And India has been such an amazing supporter of our music all the time, you know, and we really appreciate everybody's support, and we recognize it, and you know, we do want to come over, and we really hope that India starts having lots of shows, you know, so they get to see all their favorite bands.
Definitely.
All their musicians, and you know, the more bands come over, the easier it is for other bands to start making it over. So the more India keeps supporting its scene and bringing over those cool bands, the easier it is for all of us to get over there.